So you've seen it everywhere, right? On supplement shelves, in articles. The buzz around curcumin is huge. But what does it actually do? Well, it's definitely not a magic cure-all, but the real science behind it is honestly way more interesting. Today, we're going to cut through the hype and explain how it really works, not by attacking disease head-on, but by changing the very environment inside your body. All right, so before we dive into what curcumin is, I think it's absolutely crucial to talk about what it's not, because this is where most of the confusion comes from. It is not a magic bullet. And this is such an important starting point. You really have to get this part right. Curcumin isn't some magic pill that you take to zap a specific disease. No. Its job is something much more subtle, and as we're about to see, probably way more fundamental to our long-term health. And that brings us to this really critical distinction. We're not talking about a drug here, something that attacks a single target. A better way to think of curcumin is as a terrain modifier. It's not about fighting one specific battle. It's about changing your body's entire internal environment to make it less friendly to disease in the first place. This is a long game strategy, for sure. So how does it actually modify that terrain? Well, the whole idea really revolves around this powerful metaphor of fire, specifically the fire of inflammation, which, modern science is pointing to more and more as the fuel for so many of our chronic diseases. Just think about what happens when you accidentally burn your hand on the stove. You get redness, right? You feel the heat, you see some swelling, and yeah, there's pain. That is a perfect textbook example of acute inflammation, and it's a powerful, healthy, and temporary healing response. In short bursts like that, it's actually a very, very good thing. That quick, healthy response is vital for survival. But here's the million-dollar question. What happens when the off switch breaks? What happens when that fire just keeps smoldering in the background day in and day out and never really goes out? Well, that's what we call chronic inflammation. It's not some roaring blaze you can feel. It's this low-level, persistent fire that just simmers. And this is the environment, this is the terrain where disease finds it super easy to grow and thrive. It's literally the fuel. So if chronic inflammation is the problem, if it's the chaos, then how exactly does curcumin help calm everything down? To get that, we've got to zoom in a little bit and look at what's happening at the cellular level. Okay, so healthy cells, they operate on really clear signals. Grow, stop, repair. But in that inflamed environment, the communication system just breaks down. Unhealthy cells can get stuck with one signal just blaring constantly. It's like a broken fire alarm that won't stop screaming, grow, grow, grow. And it just creates total chaos. So what curcumin does here is pretty fascinating. It doesn't just come in and cut the wire on that broken alarm. It's more elegant than that. It acts more like a dimmer switch or a volume knob. It interferes with that faulty signal and essentially just helps turn the volume down, which allows the cell to finally hear other important signals and restore some order. This brings us right back to that whole terrain idea. The best analogy is probably a garden. Weeds, let's call them unhealthy cells, they just love growing in poor, stressed-out soil. You can pull them out all day long, but if you don't actually fix the soil quality, they're just going to keep coming back. Curcumin works by helping to improve the soil itself, making the whole environment less welcoming to those weeds to begin with. Now, that chaotic environment is also fueled by something called oxidative stress. It sounds complicated, but a really simple way to think of it is as internal rust. Yeah, literally. Just like rust corrodes metal, oxidative stress damages our cells from the inside out. Curcumin is a potent antioxidant, which means it helps keep that internal environment clean and basically prevents the rust from ever forming. And finally, let's talk about the immune system. You don't want an immune system that's asleep on the job, obviously, but you also don't want one that's totally over-caffeinated and panicking, right? Attacking everything in sight. Curcumin helps promote that perfect balance. It encourages a calm, intelligent guard that can spot the real threats way more effectively than a panicked one ever could. Okay, so we know how it works in theory, but there is a really, really important practical piece to this puzzle. It's not as simple as just eating more turmeric. We have to talk about absorption. So here's the catch. On its own, curcumin is actually very poorly absorbed by our bodies. It's true, a lot of it just passes right through you without ever getting a chance to do its job. So, how do we solve that little problem? What's pretty amazing is that the solution was figured out thousands of years ago in ancient traditions. They always consumed turmeric with black pepper and with healthy fats. And now, modern science has shown us exactly why. There's a compound in black pepper called piperine, and it can increase curcumin's absorption by up to, get this, 2,000%. It's a perfect case of ancient wisdom being spot on.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together now. When we step back and look at the big picture, you can really see how all these different actions combine to improve the body's overall terrain.
So you can see the combined effect here, what you might call the metabolic five. Curcumin isn't a one-trick pony at all. It cools the body's fire. It cleans up that internal rust. It quiets the faulty cell signals. And it supports a smart, balanced immune system. All of this works together, in concert, to improve the body's entire terrain. It's not an attack. It's more like a full system upgrade. Ultimately, the story of curcumin isn't about fighting a war against disease. It's about restoring order. It's about creating a calm, cool internal environment where your healthy cells can thrive. And unhealthy cells, well, they simply find it's not a very nice place to be. And that shift in perspective, that might just be its most powerful effect of all.